Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for this warm welcome. Thank you for helping everyone in this room recognize the close ties that everyone here has to the Jewish Theological Seminary as alumni, as people who have been touched by our teaching, by our faculty, by the Torah that we share, and the leaders that we train, and that so many of you have been privileged to be touched by. I have to say, being here on this bimah, Park Avenue Synagogue is a second home for the Jewish Theological Seminary. I was bestowed my master's degree on this bimah. My late husband was ordained on this bimah. This has been a second home to us, not only because of the close ties that we have, but also because after the JTS fire, when we could not have commencement in our own space during periods of construction, when we could not have commencement in our space, this literally became our second home. And so it's personally meaningful for me to be in this space in this way. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the challenges of the moment. Rabbi Cosgrove just mentioned what it means to be here in this time, in this space, when we have so many options in this world to choose from, when it is easy to assimilate to the larger culture. We worry about anti-Semitism. We wring our hands over the challenges to democracy, both here and in Israel. We're worried about the widening gulf, not only between American Jews and Israel, but between Jews on opposite ends of the religious spectrum. I'm not here to wring my hands with you, and I'm also not a prophet, but as a historian, I look for clues. I look for clues in our past. What is it that enabled American Jewry to flourish in this country? A country, yes, that is in its soul. This country is about voluntarism. It's about individualism. We Jews have unbridled choices for our lives. How is it that the earliest American Jews and those who followed them created a flourishing community that we can harness to address some of these challenges? So I'm going to take take a lesson from the 18th century, 19th, and 20th centuries to help us figure this out. It's important to remember that when the United States was founded, there were 2,500 Jews in this country, less than 0.1% of the population. There were 5 synagogues in the whole country, no rabbis, no entrenched religious traditions, no federations or JCCs, no Jewish publishers, no schools of Jewish learning. It would have been so easy for Jews to assimilate and disappear into the American landscape. Why didn't they? They wanted to live here as Jews. And how did they do that without all of that infrastructure that we take for granted? There's one moment that encapsulates what enabled them to succeed. In 1788, the Constitution of the United States was ratified. There were parades all over the country. The biggest celebration took place, not surprisingly, on July 4th, and in Philadelphia, which was the capital of the country at the time. There were parades and floats on those parades. And there was a float called the Federal Roof, a float called Union, a float called Independence. There were blacksmiths who walked behind large bellows symbolizing the passion to keep alive the flame of liberty. Clergy marched arm in arm in the parade, and I just told you there were no rabbis. A chazan served that role of religious leader for the Jews. One of the children, Naftali Phillips, described the event, and we're lucky enough to have his words. Here's what he wrote. There were a number of long tables loaded with all kinds of provisions, with a separate table for the Jews, who could not partake of the meat from the other tables. But they had a full supply of pickled salmon, bread and crackers, almonds, raisins, etc. The table was under the charge of an old cobbler named Isaac Moses. This story captures the balancing act that has proven essential to a flourishing American Jewish life, standing firmly and proudly as both part of American life and apart from it. Right from the start, Jews realized that their lives would be most meaningful and complete if they led integrated lives that honored and valued their identity as both Americans and as Jews. Now let's look at the 19th century. In the 19th century, there were more Jews, but still very small in number compared to the rest of the population. And yet, they found ways to gather as Jews, even if that meant after a week of peddling out in the hinterlands, they found a Jewish boarding house where they'd get a Shabbat meal, and they could sit around and play cards with other Jews. They found ways to take care of one another, to celebrate together, and thanks to chazanim and other functionaries who served as mohalim, shochtim, so they could get circumcise their children, they could kosher food, they could worship together, and at the same time contribute to the founding and flourishing of the towns and cities throughout the country. Later in the century, the infrastructure of American Jewish life began to take shape. Synagogues, social and benevolent organizations, schools, and hospitals. Slowly, American Jews developed a sense of national identity. Listen to this stirring letter to the editor from a young man in Texas in 1853 that never ceases to send chills down my own spine. It will surprise you, sir, to hear from such a remote part of the frontier of Texas. I'm sorry to say I'm a poor scholar. I cannot express my feeling with the pen when I accidentally came in possession of such valuable information as contained in your valuable newspaper, The Occident. May the living God spare you that you may accomplish what you've undertaken to do. I'm sorry to say I was ignorant what was going on, although I'm in this country 15 years. I'm happy, very happy indeed, to see that our true religion has a public advocate. I cannot find the words to express my feelings. You can put me on your list of subscribers. I'd like to send you pay in advance, but here we can't obtain paper money when we please, and I live a long ways from the coast. As soon as I can obtain paper money, I'll remit it to you. I hope you will believe me to be a true Jew and a friend to our cause. When we hear those words, we get a sense of just how important it was for isolated Jews to feel tied to their fellow Jews throughout the country. Now let's look at the 20th century. We know that the Jewish population exploded. 2.25 million Eastern European Jews came to these shores, and the challenge of helping them figure out how to lead integrated lives felt overwhelming. It was this enormous challenge that drew Solomon Schechter to these shores from England to assume the presidency of the Jewish Theological Seminary in 1902. I know that you have heard a lot about Solomon Schechter over the years from Rabbi Cosgrove, and for good reason. An extraordinary person, he brought serious Jewish learning and first-rate Jewish scholarship to this hemisphere. He planted the seeds of a rich Jewish life in the American soil, one that would nourish immigrant Jews who wanted to acculturate and contribute to this country while also living robust Jewish lives. He wanted to train rabbis who could win the hearts and minds of those Jews. First thing he did, he went back to Europe to recruit top-notch faculty who could combine the academic approach with a religious lens, who would encourage questioning, who would impart skills and sensibilities needed to appreciate and be fortified by our tradition. And then he required rabbinical students to have earned a BA, a Bachelor of Arts, so they'd be grounded in American culture and learning, and he introduced English and homiletics to the curriculum so that those rabbis could connect with their acculturating constituents. He and his wife, Matilda, modeled how to live a traditional Jewish life in an American idiom. In addition to his work at JTS, Schechter got involved in New York City affairs. He gave a major address about President Abraham Lincoln and the values that he represented. Matilda embraced modern aesthetics, introducing spirited communal singing to worship service, something you can take for granted here, and decorating a gorgeous sukkah for the public community, which a tradition that JTS continues to this day. This vision of American Judaism, nourished by Jewish law, by learning, by peoplehood, and the broader society, ever evolving in light of current realities, became known, as you know, as conservative Judaism. In 1906, Schechter then embraced the larger Jewish nationalist project by issuing one of the earliest statements by an American Jewish leader supportive of modern Zionism, something that was quite unpopular in this country among Jews at the time. So now, it's 21st century. We are no longer a Jewish community composed primarily of immigrants. We are well integrated into American life, but a rich, meaningful synthesis of our American and Jewish identities is proving elusive for vast numbers of American Jews. We are in urgent need of more leaders like Schechter who will capture the imagination of the next generation of Jews, help Jews access and find meaning from our tradition, and model the integrated life that has proven so essential to its flourishing. Seeing the magnificent work of JTS alumni all over the country these past few years has only strengthened my own resolve that JTS is well positioned to train those leaders. And happily, for decades now, we train not only rabbis, but also cantors and Jewish educators and academics and Jewish communal professionals and lay leaders. Why are JTS alumni so successful? Because we train individuals whose learning is broad and deep, who hone their knowledge, their moral compass, their skills throughout their lives, who offer a pastoral presence. We focus on skills and encourage creativity and nimbleness. We don't know what the future will bring, so we prepare our students not only to meet today's challenges, but also future challenges as yet unknown, unseen, unimagined. Our alumni did this magnificently during the pandemic that upended all of our lives. You experienced this in your own congregation with its outstanding leadership team, so many of whom are JTS alumni. Park Avenue Synagogue was and continues to be in the vanguard of such creative adaptation, raising the technological and spiritual quality of its offerings to meet the needs not only of the congregants here physically in this community, but of Jews all over the world. The story of the golden calf that we read this morning encapsulates the challenges and opportunities that we face today. The Israelites, think about it, they were really then just a motley crew of former slaves who had been freed from slavery a month ago. They bravely took the step to cross the Sea of Reeds for an unknown future. They received the Torah, and after hearing God's commands from Moses, they answered with one voice, "All the things God's commanded, we'll do." And yet, as we heard from Rabbi Kornsgold, Moses was gone for a little over a month, and that was enough to leave them unmoored. The Torah focuses on their egregious sin of building the golden calf. Left to their own devices, they resorted to the only thing they knew. They wanted to connect religiously, so they behaved like Egyptians. They created a tangible image. The incident reveals the yearning that people have for religious connection. It also reveals how precarious that yearning can be when it's unattached to strong religious leadership. It's this relationship between the Jewish people and their leaders that must be fortified in every era. And as we have seen, that's the mission of JTS, training leaders who will connect with our people to further enrich their lives. But we need more of them. A healthy community consists of ordinary Jews curious about their Jewishness and Jewish leaders who are talented and focused and capable of meeting them where they are. We need you to help us identify future talent in the young people that you come in contact with. When you do, send them our way for training, invest in their education, help them develop skills when they intern with you, which you do so well, and then nurture them when they return to serve your community. As Jews drift apart from one another, geographically, ideologically, and more, and in a country that is itself divided into polarized groups, we need leaders who appreciate the gifts that Judaism offers to all Jews. Leaders who can speak across difference and divide. Leaders who offer strong, confident, centrist, intellectual, cultural, and religious voices to inspire the next generation of Jews, a growing number of whom have no ties to denominational Judaism and don't appreciate how Judaism can enrich their lives. These are the leaders JTS trains so well. These are the leaders we want serving tomorrow's Jews. Partner with us to identify this talent and invest in their future and in ours. Together, we will ensure the flourishing future for decades to come.